We are joined now by Israel's ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with us this morning.
Good to be with you.
Secretary Kerry went on to say that Mr. Netanyahu's continued support of settlements placed strategically in locations where they are right now, West Bank, East Jerusalem, make a two-state solution, which John Kerry wants and which Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he wants as well, impossible. Do you disagree with that assessment?
Yes, we do disagree with it. It doesn't make it impossible. Look, this speech that was given by Secretary Kerry yesterday could have been given in the first year of the Obama administration. I'm old enough to remember, Willie, and you can go back to the tapes, that we had a crisis with the United States over the issue of settlements 3 months into the administration. The very first meeting that the Prime Minister had in the Oval Office, the same story was told, that the two-state solution was disappearing, that action had to be taken immediately on the settlements. And what we found is a speech 8 years later that just pretty much was a self-fulfilling prophecy. What the president believed going in is exactly what he believes going out. It wasn't true then, and it's not true now. There were two views that this administration put forward from the very beginning. The first was that the root of all the problems in the Middle East was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If we could just solve this problem, that was the key to stability in the Middle East. That blew up about 5 years ago in Tunisia when the fruit vendor lit himself on fire. You have Syria collapsing, Iraq, Yemen, Libya. You have chaos throughout the whole Middle East. The one place, where you don't have chaos, it's Israel and the Palestinian areas. And guess what? We don't have peace. But that seems to be the most stable place. The second view was that the settlements are the root of the conflict. It was not true then, and it's not true now. And I think we have to start dealing with the root of the conflict, which is the persistent refusal of the Palestinians to recognize a Jewish state in any boundary.
Yeah. And Secretary Kerry did talk yesterday about what he called the extremist agenda of Hamas. But do you not believe that the continued expansion of settlements makes it less likely that the Palestinians will want to come to the table and discuss a solution with you?
No, I believe the opposite. But let me just say about the extremist agenda.
Tell me about the opposite.
I'll get to it in a second. But you said the extremist agenda of Hamas.
Secretary
Hamas
Kerry
doesn't
said
have but that's a nice euphemism. Hamas is a terror organization that's murdered over 1,000 Israelis, who launched thousands of rockets at us, who have a charter that calls for the murder of Jews. That's not an extremist agenda. Now, as for the question of the settlements, one of the things that is not understood is the Palestinians feel, basically, that they can avoid negotiations with Israel, blame Israel, internationalize the conflict, and simply wait for the international community to deliver Israel on a silver platter. Actually, Israel going about living their lives, continuing to live their lives, continuing to build in these areas that are in dispute, may one day convince the Palestinians, you know what, you should come to the table to actually negotiate with Israel. Because if you don't do that, Israel's just going to keep going on with their lives. They're not going to freeze life because you've decided not to negotiate peace. One thing that was missing in Secretary Kerry's speech yesterday, it was 72 minutes. It was a very long speech. He blamed Israel for the failure to achieve peace. What he didn't say was that in 2000, an Israeli government made a sweeping peace offer to the Palestinians. Arafat rejected it, and then he launched a terror campaign against Israel. And in 2008, another peace offer was put forward, and the Palestinians also rejected that. So this is not about Israel not wanting peace. It's about the Palestinians not wanting to end the conflict. They want a state to continue the conflict, not to end the conflict.
John Heilman.
Hey, Ron, it's John Heilman here. You guys, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government have made a relatively serious charge in saying that the United States orchestrated the vote in the UN. Where's the proof for that?
Well, we have the proof, and like we said, we will present it to the incoming administration. It's sensitive information that we obviously would share with the U.S. administration. We can't share it with this administration because they're behind it to begin with, and there'll be the relevant members of Congress who would have access to that information as well. And if your government decides to share it with the American people, they will do it. But the Prime Minister doesn't make such a charge on international television without it being based 100% on evidence. So Ron, you just have to be a little patient. Invite me back in a little while on your show.
But Ron, this controversy is happening right now, and with due respect, I mean, I think it's not really a question of sharing it with which administration you share it with. It seems like you should share it with the international community if you're going to make that kind of severe a charge that's inflamed the situation as badly as it has.
Well, I think what's inflamed this situation is actually the UN Security Council resolution and the substance of that resolution. This issue, to me, is not the main issue. This does not have any long-term implications for the relationship between the United States and Israel, but that UN Security Council resolution really sets us back in order to advance peace. But this is sensitive information. And we're very careful when we release sensitive information, because sensitive information could be, have political implications in one place, but it could actually be life and death in other places. So Ron, we have to be very careful. We will present it to the new administration, and they will be able to share it with the American people if they so choose.
But Roger, I just got to press you on this a little bit more. I know you're saying it's sensitive information, but you've made a pretty egregious charge here, right? You've accused the United States of stabbing Israel in the back.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. I said that they orchestrated this resolution, but we would be in the same place, John, had they actually just said that this is a resolution that we support openly. I'd be making the same case. That's why I say that, to me, this is largely, I know the news is very interested in this, but this is not the main story. The main story is a resolution that says the Western Wall is occupied Palestinian territory, that's a tailwind for boycotts and sanctions against Israel, taking Israel to the International Criminal Court, that shifts the terms of reference in the negotiations and essentially tells Israel that you can't negotiate because the land that you're supposed to negotiate with is not already yours. Those are the real issues. This, I know, is an important issue in the press, and I'm sure in the weeks ahead, maybe you'll invite me back and we can discuss it again.
Just to put a button on this, though, Ambassador, the White House has said unequivocally that did not happen, that the United States did not orchestrate this, it did not push this through. They said, in fact, this morning that was an Egyptian measure introduced, and the United States agreed to go along with it only if it were balanced, and that it condemned Palestinians as well. So is the White House then lying about this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to see the balanced resolution. It talks about incitement and terrorism. It just doesn't mention the word Palestinian.
Right, but what about the White House assessment? Is that a lie?
Well, I'm not going to categorize it as such. I fully support what the Prime Minister has said. We have ironclad evidence that this was orchestrated by the U.S. administration.
Josh Green.
Mr. Ambassador, both Robin Wright and Senator Murphy have made clear this morning that it's imperative that any U.S. president be seen as a neutral broker in the peace process. What makes you believe that a President Trump can be seen by both sides as a neutral broker in the peace process?
Well, I don't know what exactly it means to be a neutral broker. I think it's imperative for a U.S. president to stand beside an Israeli ally that is fighting the same enemies as you're fighting, that shares the same values and shares the same interests. And we have a common goal of achieving peace. And I think when you have a U.S. administration that shows that there's no daylight between the U.S. and Israel, the chances of peace actually go up. That's what brought peace between Israel and Egypt. That's what brought peace between Israel and Jordan. And that's what can ultimately bring peace between Israel and the Palestinians if they choose to cross a Rubicon. One thing I think it's important to say, I do not blame any Secretary of State, any president, regardless of who it is, for the failure to achieve peace between Israelis and Palestinians. The reason why we do not have peace is because the Palestinians refuse to accept the existence and the right of the Jewish people to a state in our ancestral homeland. That is the problem. A president of the United States cannot force them to do that. But what he can do is stand beside Israel, speak truth to the world about what this conflict is all about, and hopefully the Palestinians will realize that they have no chance to defeat Israel militarily or to defeat it diplomatically. Ultimately, if they can't beat them, they can join them, and together we can have a much better future for both Israelis and Palestinians. That's what we want to see.
Rick Tyler.
Mr. Ambassador, Rick Tyler, the incoming ambassador, David Friedman, what's your opinion of him? He's been a critic of the two-state solution, and are we beyond a two-state solution? If there isn't a two-state solution, what does peace look like?
Well, with all due respect to ambassadors, and I do have respect for ambassadors, it's the presidents and the prime ministers that set the policy. I don't believe that Mr. Friedman, who I've had the opportunity to meet with and is a brilliant lawyer, and I think he'll be an excellent ambassador, I don't think he was chosen because of his ideology. I think he was chosen because the president-elect knows him for many years, thinks he's a very good negotiator, thinks he'd be very effective as ambassador, and I think he will be. I think that's what he was chosen, and people are choosing this story to suggest that somehow his ideology is going to drive events. I don't set the policies of the government of Israel, and Mr. Friedman will not set the policies of the government of the United States. That will be set by the president and the prime minister, and hopefully they will come together very, very soon to see if we can forge a common policy to deal with all of the issues, the many challenges we face in the region, but also the many opportunities because of changes that are happening in the Arab world, where they no longer see Israel as an enemy, but as a potential ally in fighting Iran, in fighting ISIS, and in other issues.
Ambassador, Prime Minister Netanyahu thanked Donald Trump yesterday in a tweet for his continued support of Israel. Have the two men spoken personally in the last few days?
No, they have not spoken personally in the last few days.
Are they communicating only via Twitter, or are there communications between the two camps?
We're in communication with them because what happened was we went to the White House before this resolution. I personally was in the White House speaking to senior administration officials, asking them not to go ahead with this because we knew what was going on. And we said, don't do this. We will oppose it. We'll oppose it forcefully, and you will force us into a position where we're going to have to reach out to a president-elect and ask him to weigh in into this. We told that to the White House before. Unfortunately, they went ahead, and now we are where we are. And I know that a lot of the talk in the press for the first few days was how outrageous it was for a president-elect to weigh in and to breach this policy of one president at a time. But what I actually think is outrageous for an outgoing administration in the waning days of its presidency to radically shift U.S. policy without the knowledge or the support of the incoming administration.
And do you believe it'll be shifted back on January the 20th under Donald Trump?
Absolutely, but I think that there is damage now that has been done by this Security Council resolution, and we're going to have to work with the new administration and with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans alike, to see how we can mitigate the damage of the resolution and hopefully ultimately repeal it.
All right. Israeli Ambassador Ron Dermer, always appreciate your time. Thank you very much, sir.